the idea of reducing carbon by doing lots of early burning sounds pretty crazy, that we're going to go out and light more fires and that's going to prevent fires later down the track had some people somewhat sceptical, I think, but we've managed to prove them wrong. This was the first carbon project, not just in Australia, but the first carbon project in regards to using fire in the world.
What was an unexpected idea, an idea that kind of came out of nowhere, but which once we'd tried we found worked, and so that's how it's been going ever since.
Northern Australia currently above 1,000 millimetres, it's about 500,000 square k's. Over half that area burns each year. Pretty staggering statistic. And most of that occurs in the late dry season as wildfire. So we've got a pretty serious problem.
Within that area, the vegetation ranges from lowland savannas with a eucalypt overstory with a grassy understory through to rugged sandstone and escarpments.
It's incredibly diverse. It's one of the Northern Territory's crown jewels in regards to biodiversity.
Savannas also by definition are fire-prone landscapes, and they're by far the most fire-prone vegetation type on Earth.
The West Arnhem Land Fire Abatement Project covers about 28,000 square kilometres of Western Arnhem Land.
The 5 partners, other than Wadikan, are Jarwin, Weemole down at Bullman, and Jelk to the north, and Udjamalal in Oampelli. And we work with all those groups to get good outcomes for fire management.
Before the Walfer project started, there was a growing concern amongst traditional owners, scientists. The concern was that there were these incredibly large, destructive wildfires that would cover anything up to tens of thousands of square kilometres in a single event.
The damages can be extreme. It burns out a whole lot of trees that are specific in that area, and it burns out a lot of homes like logs and for like small marsupial, lizards.
Finding that there was a problem with fire in those areas was something that I think comes from the work that Jeremy Russell Smith and others did when they were surveying jungles and monsoon forests around the top of the Northern Territory.
People were concerned from things like where are all the emus, through to, you can see that a lot of the unbinic patches, the big jungles, very important trees were in pretty sore shape as well.
Yeah. It's got a lot of burnt mark here. It's been burnt from the last probably 5-6 years ago. A lot of the wildfires come through in this particular rainforest, and it damaged a lot of the seedlings, a lot of young ones, and burned real hot.
The tree, it grows up to 800 years old before it got, and so amazing. Here in Australia, in northern part of Australia, in Arnhem Land, we have this special tree that need to be looked after, and we want to see that expansion of that rainforest.
To understand why the area had such a problem with wildfire, we have to look at the history of Australia as a nation, in that it was always managed by Aboriginal people. That involved very fine-scale, deliberate management of fire within that landscape. With colonisation, that ceased largely.
Those numbers of people steadily declined from the end of the 19th century through till a time around the Second World War when there were very few families left on the plateau.
That wildfire is always controlled because of people who was around us. But nowadays, when we left the country, nobody there, nobody's looking after it. This whole chap very concerned about what about the animals, what about our plants, what about our medicine. And now old fellows used to say, we want to bring our people back on the landscape once again and live and manage this country as it's done before.
One of the things that we did first of all was to organise big meetings out in Arnhem Land. It was a question of sharing the knowledge of what was happening out of people's sight.
Bringing together traditional owners and groups right across the wildfire project area to discuss the problems that were happening, to discuss how it had to be fixed, but also to start adapting traditional knowledge about fire management into this new idea of flying around in helicopters and actually, doing burning.
One of the things that we wanted older people to tell us was what fire was like when they were young, and some of these people, like Lofty Nudjameric, had grown up on the plateau, in a time when fire management was still in reasonable shape. So we started doing some test work, delivering incendiaries out of helicopters. So the notion of breaking the country up into compartments by early burning delivered by helicopter came around. But to deliver it for the whole of the area was going to be much more costly, and we needed other means to do this. At this stage, people were starting to talk about greenhouse gas abatement and but carbon trading, and this caught our imagination as a way that might be able to be used to find funding to deliver this sort of management.
So in 2000 we put up a proposal that said that through better fire management, emulating traditional approaches, strategic early dry season, patchy burns, we would be able to substantially reduce the amount of greenhouse emissions.
This was the first carbon project, not just in Australia, but the first carbon project in regards to using fire in the world.
We had to get in place very detailed fire mapping. We need to know fire extent. We need to know about the types of vegetation and the fuels that were being burnt.
Scientists from around the world, they came here because I think it was a very exciting moment. The heat of them running around, but each had a little plot to go to and work with, and that's quite amazing.
There was a long and hard process that was gone through, and with a lot of rigour, and a few changes had to be made along the way, but they created a thing called the savanna burning methodology.
At the same time, Conoco Phillips was setting up their plant in Darwin Harbour.
Understanding that Conoco Phillips were going to commit to some greenhouse emission offsets, it led us to see an opportunity to open up a dialogue to see if something that could benefit them could also benefit people in Arnhem Land.
Although LNG is a cleaner fuel than other hydrocarbon alternatives, we wanted to do more and we saw an opportunity to do more.
We had a credible methodology which we could place in front of them that they might like to consider that would be pertinent to the Northern Territory.
We looked at a number of offset programs, but the wildfire program stood out to not only meet the emission offsets that we wanted to achieve, but to have quite substantial social and cultural and environmental benefits for the local community.
To their credit, they came back and took a big risk. This was a totally innovative proposal globally. No one else had ever come up with this sort of suggestion.
The fact that Charles Darwin had been working with the ranger groups and the NT bushfires for such an extensive period of time, really proving up that this model worked, and was able to go through all the calculations and demonstrate to us that it was going to be viable. It was easy to take such an innovative step towards a new program such as this.
In 2006, a contract, 17-year contract was signed to deliver an offset project.
How good is that? We're still proud of it. The offer was made to us.
It was a whole new ball game when the Conoco Phillips money came through to us.
What we've shown with the wildfire project is, and what it's been demonstrating throughout its entire operation, is that we can reduce those emissions by between 1/4 to 40% each year. So each year, by doing the early dry season burning, preventing those late dry season fires from spreading, we're actually abating well over 100,000 tonnes of greenhouse gases each year.
Walfa historically ran at about 350,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent before the project. Since 2006, it has achieved an annual abatement of 140,000 tonnes. That has effectively meant the fire management has improved the amount of emissions by 35%.
A lot of the animals coming back on the landscape, which is really proudly that we're working something very special for that particular animals.
We've noticed a return of emus, which a lot of our older generation are happy to see.
When we're doing a lot of fire breaking, we come across to a lot of our paintings. And we know those paintings are very important and it has a lot of stories and histories. There's a lot of animals painting it. There's also a lot of Mimi spirits are being painted in this shelter.
There's an incredible bounty of rock art. It's on almost every surface. But that can be damaged by late dry season wildfires. When the fire burns very hotly, it heats up the rock and it blows the rock surface that the paintings are on off the face itself, so completely destroying it.
We use fire to remove some of those like fuel loads near the sites.
We'll probably never know exactly what was lost, but it's certainly one of the key reasons to continue doing the work that we're doing is that it will protect that amazing heritage that people have out there.
It's very important to protect this sort of artwork, so for the future of my children can appreciate it.
What I do, use this match, throw it on the ground. When we add on country, we feel like going back home.
Walfa could not have happened without these things happening, without Indigenous people being back on their country and managing it. And that has been one of the truly great things that it's given to Indigenous land management. It's valued what they do, it's valued people's traditional knowledge, and it's given a huge incentive for people to be on their country, where they want to be, and valued their input whilst they're there.
For us, it's an enormous success in a truly sustainable project. It's met all the technical criteria around carbon offsets that we wanted it to meet, but more importantly, it's delivered local jobs, probably over 200 jobs into the Indigenous ranger groups each year.
Our knowledge has emerged from the traditional to this new world today, and now we created it and we're sharing the ideas to many Indigenous ranger groups across northern Australia and now lots of countries.
It really is a homegrown territory project that now the world holds up as an excellent example of sustainable development.
I'd like to think about it from the achievement and the vision that Lofty Nudjamerik had of people being able to come back to their country, people being able to live on their country, people being able to have jobs on their country and working to keep their country healthy. And that was his great vision, and I think we've still got further to go, but we've gone a long way towards making that vision a reality.
Fire is the answer and fire is a tool. This is our landscape, this is how we live, this is how we want to protect, but this is where we belong here.